Hey guys, today we'll be talking about variables and variable scope. So to start off, let's look at lines 4 and 5. Both of these variable declarations start with either an underscore or a $sign. These are both valid declarations for variables in Java. Although it is not common practice, it is legal. This is an important note to keep in mind, as it may come up in the future. Let's move to lines 7, 8, and 9. Here we have created three instance variables. Keep in mind that these instance variables are not set to any value. This point will come in handy later in the video. An instance variable is a variable that can be accessed from anywhere in the class. Let's move to the main method. On line 12, we have created an object with an object reference called v. On lines 13, 14, and 15, we are accessing the instance variables from lines 7, 8, and 9. Notice that on lines 13 and 14, we are using the object reference to access the instance variables on lines 7 and 8. But on line 15, in the main method, we are simply calling number 2 instead of using the object reference. For non-static instance variables, we must use the object reference, a dot, and the instance variable name to access the instance variable. But for static instance variables, we can simply call the name of the variable, as we have done on line 15. Let's run this application and see what happens. So on line 13, the main has printed out 0. For line 14, it has printed null. In line 15, it has printed 0. Why is this? We never set these instance variables to any value, so how could it print out these values? The reason these values are printed out is because when an instance variable is not set to a value, it is automatically assigned to the default value. The default value of int is 0. The default value of string is null. I will provide a link in the description below of the default values of all the data types. Let's say that we were to assign each of these instance variables two actual values. Let's run the application and see what happens. Now the lines 13, 14, and 15 have printed 12, Sam, and 13 respectively. This is because we have set the instance variables to a value. Let's move to line 16. Here we are trying to print a method named sum that is taking two parameters. To understand what's going on in the sum method, let's go to line 22, where the method is declared. Here we have a static method that takes two parameters. We know it's a static method. We know it is a static method as it is written in the method signature. On line 23, we have created a new variable called sum that adds the two parameters. Line 24 returns the sum variable. The sum variable is known as a class variable as it is declared in a static method. Let's see what happens when we print this program. So I'm going to comment out lines 13, 14, and 15 as we already know what will happen on those lines. The sum is 12. Let's understand what happened here. We have inputted two parameters, 5 and 7. The 5 goes in the place of int a, and the 7 goes in the place of int b. Now we add the values here on line 23. We get 12, and the method returns 12, and 12 is printed. So this is how parameters work. Let's look at line 27. We have a method here called language of type string. On line 28, we have created a sentence variable that's equal to I love Java. The variable declared on line 28 is known as a local variable. The reason this is called a local variable is because it can only be accessed within the language method. The range of the language method is from this first bracket to this final bracket. If I were to try to access sentence from the main, I would get an error because I cannot reach this variable, as it has a limited scope. So we have covered instance variables, class variables, local variables, and using parameters, as well as variable scope. So these are the main ideas of this lecture, and I'll see you in the next lecture.